time stood still, until Grayson Whitmore exhaled the words that would change everything. "Lila, there's someone I want you to meet." 8-year-old Lila Whitmore glanced up from her sketchbook, a pencil stilled in her hand. Her drawings, mostly garden birds and spiraling flowers, looked suddenly out of place on the Italian marble kitchen island. Her father stood across from her, back straight, voice polished. He wore that crisp white shirt he reserved for business dinners and interview spreads in Southern living. But today he wasn't talking to a camera or a boardroom. He was talking to her. And there was a shine in his eyes that made her stomach knot. "She's coming for dinner tonight," he added, checking his Rolex. "Actually, she's already here." The sound of heels clicked softly against the hallway's antique heart pine floor. Lila's hand clenched her pencil just as the woman entered. Celeste Carrington moved like someone who knew all eyes belonged to her. Tall, honey blonde, wearing a pastel silk blouse and pearls that caught the late sun, she smiled with an elegance so precise it felt choreographed. She extended a soft-gloved hand toward Lila. "You must be Lila," she said, her southern accent wrapped in velvet. "Your father talks about you non-stop." Lila stood slowly, taking the woman's hand with the caution she used when touching something that looked fragile but wasn't. Celeste's hand was smooth, cold. "Hi," Lila said. "Nice to meet you." "You're just as lovely as I imagined," Celeste replied. "I brought you a little something." She produced a small white box, tied in a satin bow. Inside was a silver charm bracelet with one charm already attached, a tiny piano. "Your dad says you're learning," Celeste smiled. "I thought we could start a collection, a new charm for every milestone." "Thank you," Lila murmured, though her fingers felt heavy as she fastened the clasp. She didn't like how her dad looked at Celeste, as if the room lit up when she walked in. He hadn't looked at anything that way since Mom. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, though they never used it unless reporters or donors were coming over. Grayson insisted on doing things properly. "Celeste works with non-profits," he explained between bites of roasted duck. "She consults for youth organizations, helped turn around that art center downtown." Celeste touched his arm gently. "Grayson's being generous. I just point talented people in the right direction." Lila studied her. The woman didn't eat much. She smiled often, but the corners of her eyes never moved. Her compliments were just right. Never too much, never too little. The air around her felt practiced. Later that night, as Lila watched from the stairway railing, her father walked Celeste to the door. He kissed her cheek, murmured something she couldn't hear. Celeste laughed, musical, effortless, and stepped outside, disappearing into a sleek black car, idling at the gate. When Grayson turned and caught Lila watching, he didn't scold. He just smiled like a man who believed his life was finally back on track. "Did you like her?" he asked, walking upstairs. Lila hesitated. "She's really pretty." "She is, isn't she?" he said with a lightness she hadn't heard in years. "It's been a while since I felt something this real." Lila bit her lip. "She doesn't smile with her eyes." He chuckled. "That's a very Lila thing to notice." She didn't laugh. Grayson reached the top of the stairs and crouched to her level. "Sweetheart, life doesn't stop after loss. Your mom wouldn't want us frozen in sadness. She'd want us to live." Lila stared at the floor. "Are you happy?" "I'm trying to be," he said gently. "Aren't you?" Lila wanted to say yes, but her words stayed stuck. She just nodded. That night, she slipped the bracelet off and placed it beside her music box, the one Mom had given her before the hospital visits became daily. She wound the box slowly. The lullaby tune creaked into the silence. Somehow, it felt wrong tonight. The next morning brought sunlight and smooth lies. At breakfast, Grayson tapped his spoon against his coffee cup like a gavel. "I have news," he said. Lila looked up from her waffles. "I asked Celeste to marry me. She said yes." His words were bright, like the brass chandelier overhead, but Lila felt the chill beneath them. "You're getting married?" she asked quietly. "In the fall, nothing huge, just family and friends at the chapel." "She wants to help plan everything. Isn't that great?" Lila stared at the syrup pooling on her plate. "It's fast." "When you know, he said, his smile more defensive now. "And she wants to be a part of our lives." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Lila, I want this, and I think we're ready." She didn't answer. Later that day, while riding with Aunt May to her art gallery, Lila finally spoke up. "She's moving in." May glanced over. "Celeste?" Lila nodded. May pursed her lips but didn't speak. She tapped the steering wheel instead, fingers restless. "She wears gloves when it's warm," Lila added. May smiled slightly. "That's a very Lila thing to notice. She gave me a bracelet, said we'll add charms together." "She trying too hard?" Lila nodded. May didn't press, she never did, but as they pulled into the gallery parking lot, she said quietly, "You ever feel unsure, you come to me." Grown-ups don't always get things right, especially when their hearts want something so badly. Lila leaned her head against the window. "Dad just wants everything to be okay again." "And sometimes," May said, cutting the engine, "that's when we make the worst mistakes." That night, Celeste hosted a small welcome dinner. Local friends, board members, one of the resort's architects. Everyone laughed. Toasted. Said things like, "You've found a keeper." Grayson beamed. Celeste glowed. Lila stayed quiet, noticing things no one else seemed to see. How Celeste's hand clenched when a guest brought up her past. How she changed the subject with a practiced pivot. How her laugh dropped in pitch when Grayson wasn't near. Later, as Lila helped clear dessert plates, Celeste touched her shoulder gently. "I hope we'll become good friends," she said. Lila looked up. "Friends don't take down pictures of people's moms." Celeste blinked. "I noticed the piano photo's gone," Lila said flatly. "Your father thought it was time for something lighter," Celeste replied, her smile cool. "Memories are important, but they can hold us back." Lila carried the plate away without a word. That night, alone in her room, she reopened the music box. The tune played slower than she remembered. A crack had formed near the hinge. She watched the ballerina spin and wondered why the charm bracelet, so small, so shiny, felt like a chain instead. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Celeste moved in on a Thursday. By Saturday morning, 3 of Lila's mother's framed photographs were missing from the piano room. When she asked Grayson about it, he said they were being refitted with more modern frames. He smiled like it was no big deal. Like switching memories was as simple as swapping hardware. The house smelled different now. Lavender and rosewood drifted through the air, where lemon and cinnamon used to live. The new scent followed Celeste everywhere, on the towels, in the sheets, in the hallway after she passed. It clung to things like a quiet warning. "You're very quiet today," Celeste said from across the breakfast table. Her tone was gentle, syrupy. "Is everything all right, Lila?" "I'm fine," Lila replied, stirring her oatmeal even though she wasn't hungry. Celeste wore a soft ivory blouse with a bow at the collar, and gold hoop earrings that caught the morning sun. She sipped from a pale blue teacup and watched Lila with eyes that smiled a second too late. "I was thinking," she continued, "now that we're all settling in, we should have a little get-together. Just some close friends, maybe some of your dad's business associates. A garden brunch, what do you think?" Lila shrugged. Celeste laughed, the kind that sounded almost sincere. "Teenagers are supposed to be moody, but you've got a head start, don't you?" Grayson walked in just in time to miss the comment. He kissed Celeste on the cheek, then ruffled Lila's hair. "You two getting along already?" he asked brightly. "We're bonding," Celeste replied, smiling toward him, but glancing at Lila. Lila pushed her chair back. "I'm going to work on my project upstairs." "Don't forget," Grayson called after her, "we have dinner at the Harbor Club tonight." "I remember." The door shut gently behind her. Upstairs, Lila opened her music box again. She didn't wind it. She just stared at the ballerina, standing crooked now after years of overplaying. She ran her fingers over the charm bracelet lying beside it. One charm, one promise. That was all it was so far. By early evening, the Harbor Club buzzed with soft jazz and clinking silver. Grayson had reserved one of the private rooms with tall windows that overlooked the water. The view was beautiful, but it didn't calm Lila. Neither did the way Celeste's fingers trailed lightly along the back of Grayson's arm as they entered, as if she needed the world to see they were together. At the table already sat two new people. "Lila," Grayson said, "this is Mr. Dorian Ellis. He's been consulting on our new Savannah property, and this is his sister, Camille." Dorian stood and extended a hand. He was younger than Grayson, but older than Celeste, maybe late 30s, with sandy hair, sharp cheekbones, and the kind of smile that looked more rehearsed than warm. "So, this is the famous Lila," he said smoothly. "Your dad talks about you constantly." She shook his hand briefly and nodded to Camille, who offered only a polite smile in return. Celeste pulled out Lila's chair for her. "Sit by me tonight, sweetheart." Grayson didn't seem to notice how Lila's shoulders tensed. The conversation started with wine pairings and real estate forecasts. Dorian made jokes about the South Carolina coast becoming the new French Riviera. Camille barely spoke. Celeste, on the other hand, was radiant. She laughed at all the right places, dropped Grayson's name when discussing city projects, called attention to a photo of her on the wall from a gala 3 years ago, which she brushed off modestly, though her eyes lingered on the image. Lila picked at her grilled chicken. She wasn't hungry again. She was too busy watching how Celeste leaned in when Dorian spoke, how their words sometimes overlapped like they had a shared shorthand. Grayson never noticed. He was too busy explaining how he planned to turn an old textile mill into a luxury spa resort. "You're ambitious," Dorian said, lifting his glass. "He's brilliant," Celeste corrected, eyes soft. Lila's fork scraped the plate a little too hard. "Oops," she said quickly. "Sorry." Grayson chuckled. "That's my little architect, always working on something." Lila smiled weakly, but in her head, she was replaying the moment Celeste and Dorian locked eyes when Grayson had looked away. There was something there, not romantic, not obvious, but something tight and private. That night, back at the estate, Lila asked her father a question as he tucked her in. "Do you trust her?" He looked puzzled. "Celeste?" She nodded. "I do," he said gently. "I think she's good for us." "Don't you?" Lila hesitated. "What if she's only good at pretending to be good?" He laughed softly. "Where do you get these ideas?" "Just thinking." He kissed her forehead. Let me do the worrying, okay? She didn't answer. When the door closed, she sat back up. The air in the room felt thicker than usual. She walked to her window and pulled the curtain aside. In the driveway, Celeste stood near the edge of the property, talking on her phone. The porch lights didn't quite reach her, but Lila could see her gesturing with one hand, sharply. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't soft, she looked real. And not in the way Grayson believed. The next morning, the piano photo was back on the shelf, but in a frame that didn't match anything else. As if someone had realized something was missing and replaced it quickly. Imperfectly, Lila sat down next to it, running her fingers across the glass. Her mom was laughing in the photo, fingers on the keys. Lila beside her with a tambourine in hand. You could almost hear the joy through the silence. Behind her, Celeste entered the room without knocking. "I thought we'd move this one to the upstairs hallway," she said, walking over. Lila turned. "Why?" "It's more visible there," Celeste replied. "And your father mentioned wanting to update this space." "He didn't say that to me." Celeste picked up the photo. "Some things don't need to be said to everyone." Lila stood. "That picture belongs here." Celeste's smile flattened. "Let's not make this about a frame, darling." "It's not." They stared at each other in silence. And then, just like that, Celeste softened. "You know, this is all new to me too," she said, voice warm again. "I'm trying, Lila." "I really am." Lila didn't respond. Celeste placed the photo back, crooked, slightly tilted, then walked out. Lila stared at it for a long time before reaching up and setting it straight. Then she sat down, bracelet around her wrist again, and began writing in a new notebook. Across the top she wrote 2 words in pencil, "Trust Test," and beneath it, the first line. "She smiles like she means it, but her eyes are always a step behind." Sunday arrived like a painting, blue skies, soft breeze, and sunlight glinting off the copper gutters of the Whitmore estate. But inside, the tension was thick enough to stir into your tea. The house buzzed with soft chaos. Caterers rolled in through the side entrance. Garden chairs were aligned in perfect rows beneath the oaks, each one tied with a cream satin bow. The estate staff moved briskly, avoiding eye contact with Celeste, whose instructions floated through the hallways like perfume, light, sweet, and sharp at the edges. "This brunch is important, Lila," Grayson said, as he adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror. "Just some folks from the preservation board, a few local donors, and the mayor's assistant, very casual." Lila stood behind him, arms folded. "Is it about the wedding?" "No," he replied too quickly, then softened. "Maybe a little. But mostly, it's a good chance for people to see us together." He turned to her. "You know, your mom used to host things like this all the time. She'd set the table herself, name the roses in the centerpiece. You remind me of her sometimes." Lila looked at the floor. She wouldn't like Celeste. Grayson's smile flickered. "That's not fair, honey." "Celeste's trying. Can you try too?" She nodded, but it didn't feel like agreement, more like surrender. By mid-morning, guests trickled into the garden, all wearing linen and laughter. Charleston socialites sipped peach bellinis while commenting on the weather, as if it had RSVP'd. Lila sat at the edge of the brick path, tucked beneath a crepe myrtle, watching everything through narrowed eyes. Celeste was dazzling in a pale pink dress and soft curls that caught the light. She worked the crowd with practiced ease, offering hugs that never wrinkled her sleeves and compliments that sounded spontaneous but landed like rehearsed lines. "Grayson, this is lovely," said one guest. "She's a natural," Celeste laughed. "I'm just filling in where I can. Lila keeps me in line." Lila stiffened. She hadn't said a word to Celeste in over an hour. "Sweetheart," Celeste said, catching her eye, "would you mind showing Mrs. Fairbanks the koi pond? She's dying to see it." Lila looked at the older woman. Pearls, big hat, polite smile, then back at Celeste. "I guess." As they walked, Mrs. Fairbanks asked the usual questions. "What grade are you in? Do you play any sports? Isn't your home just beautiful?" Lila answered quietly, glancing back now and then. Celeste was watching her, not smiling. Just watching. After the tour, Lila cut back through the side garden. That's when she saw it. Behind the hedge-lined courtyard near the guest house, Celeste stood with Dorian Ellis. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, leaning against the old brick wall like he belonged there. Celeste's hands moved fast as she spoke, animated, not performative like before. Lila stepped behind the roses and held her breath. "He's warming up. Faster than we thought," Celeste said. Dorian's voice was low, careful. "Then slow it down. Don't push him too fast." "I'm not." "He's leading half the dance himself." "Lila?" Celeste went still. Slowly she turned, adjusting her posture, her tone. "Darling," she called out. "Did you need something?" Lila stepped from the bushes like a rabbit cornered. "I was just walking." Celeste smiled gently. "This is Dorian." "I think you've met." He waved. "Fancy seeing you again." "Why were you hiding?" Celeste asked. "I wasn't." Celeste walked over, smoothing Lila's hair in a way that felt like a command. "We wouldn't want guests to see you snooping through the shrubbery. Let's keep things graceful, okay?" Lila nodded, then walked back toward the house, the smell of gardenia too sweet in the air. She didn't turn around. That night, Lila sat at her desk and wrote in her notebook. Trust test. Entry 3. She talks different when Dad isn't around. Like a new voice slips out. Sharper. Faster. Real. Downstairs, the dishwasher hummed. Celeste was humming too, off-key, as she rinsed glasses. Grayson had gone to his study, the garden brunch a glowing success in his mind. Lila tiptoed to the landing. She crouched and listened. Celeste's phone buzzed. She answered in a whisper. "No, not yet. He's asking questions, but nothing serious. He's just desperate. He wants it to work. All I have to do is keep smiling." A pause. "Yes, I saw her. She knows something's off." "The kid's smart." Another pause. "No, not yet." "But I will." Lila backed away, breath caught in her throat. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just went back to her room and shut the door, slowly, carefully, like someone who knew the rules had changed but didn't know how to play them yet. At school the next day, Ms. Harper knelt beside Lila's desk after class. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Everything okay at home?" Lila nodded too quickly. "You sure?" "I'm fine, Mrs." Harper studied her a moment longer, then handed her a small notebook, just in case you want to write something down, not for homework. "Just for you." Lila took it. "Thank you." Back at home that afternoon, she sat on the porch swing, flipping through the blank pages. The wind tugged at her braid, rustling the pages like impatient fingers. She wrote, "If I disappear this book, someone will know," and tucked it inside the cushion cover. Later that evening, during dessert, Celeste made a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, lifting her wineglass, "and to the little girl who's teaching me the beauty of second chances." Lila's spoon paused mid-air. Everyone clapped politely. Grayson smiled at Celeste, eyes soft, almost tearful. Lila lowered her spoon and watched and waited. If you enjoyed this video, Comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The morning after the garden brunch, the estate was unusually quiet. The staff moved slower. The scent of yesterday's hydrangeas clung faintly to the air, but the sparkle had dimmed. Grayson left early for a board meeting downtown, kissing Lila on the head before he left. She didn't stir from the couch. Celeste was nowhere to be seen. Lila waited until the front door clicked shut before creeping toward the study. Her footsteps were soft against the dark oak floors, her heart tapping out a steady rhythm that matched the grandfather clock in the foyer. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, just that she couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Inside the study, the air was cool and still. The shelves were filled with her father's books, architecture, business, old biographies, and the top drawer of his desk held pens, receipts, and a notepad with curling corners. She flipped through it. Notes about land deals, appointments, a few dinner reservations, and then a line scrawled in blue ink. Policy paperwork. Celeste. Monday. Lila froze. Policy? She knew enough from school to know that meant insurance, or maybe something worse. Her fingers tightened around the paper, but just as she reached for the next page, she heard footsteps on the stairs. She darted from the study and slipped into the kitchen just as Celeste walked in, holding a latte in one hand and her phone in the other. Her face looked different without makeup, tighter, less warm, but the smile returned instantly when she saw Lila. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, sliding the phone into her purse. "Your dad said you were off school today." "Teacher planning day." "Lucky you." Celeste walked to the fridge. "I was thinking, maybe we could go shopping together." "Bond a little." Lila blinked. "Shopping?" "Just a couple boutiques on King Street. Maybe grab lunch." "It's important we get to know each other, don't you think?" Lila hesitated. "Can Aunt May come?" Celeste paused, then smiled again, thinner this time. "Well, I thought just us girls, but sure." "If you'd feel more comfortable." "I'll text her," Lila said quickly. An hour later, May pulled up in her old silver Buick. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, even though the sky was mostly clouds. "Ready?" she asked, glancing toward the house. "Very," Lila said, sliding into the front seat. May didn't speak until they were 2 turns away from the estate. "You packed a bag," she said. Lila's small backpack sat in her lap, zipper straining slightly. "Just in case." May nodded. "Something happen?" "She talks on the phone when no one's around. And she told someone I'm smart. Like it's a problem." May exhaled through her nose. "You want me to dig a little?" "Yes," Lila said. "I think she's lying about a lot of things." May reached over and gave her knee a gentle pat. "All right, honey. We'll start slow. Nothing noisy." They parked near the art gallery May co-owned with a friend. It was closed on Mondays, but May let them in through the back and made tea, while Lila curled up in one of the soft velvet chairs near the window. The space smelled like oil paint and old wood. It was warm and quiet, like a pocket of time separate from everything else. May brought over 2 mugs. "All right," she said. "Tell me everything." Lila recounted the brunch, the strange conversation behind the garden, Celeste's phone call, the toast, the policy paperwork note. May listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her eyes dark and focused. "She's smart," May said finally, "and careful. But nobody's perfect, not even liars." "You believe me?" "Of course I do." Lila's shoulders dropped a little. It was the first time in days she felt like someone truly heard her. Back at the estate that afternoon, Celeste was in the solarium, arranging flowers. Tulips. Her lipstick matched. "You two were gone a while," she said without turning around. "We got smoothies after the gallery," Lila replied. "Aunt May needed to drop off some paperwork." Celeste trimmed a stem with slow precision. "Next time, let me know if you're leaving for more than an hour. I had lunch planned." Lila didn't answer. She was staring at the new frame on the mantel, a wedding photo, not from the future. From the past. Celeste and a man Lila didn't recognize, standing in front of what looked like a courthouse. The frame was modern, silver. The photo angled just enough to look like part of the decor. "That's not Dad," Lila said softly. Celeste followed her gaze. "Oh, that's from a charity event. Costume gala. We pretended to be newlyweds for a skit." Lila walked closer. "He looks real." Celeste's hand came down gently on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, I know change is hard. I'm not replacing anyone. I just want to be part of your life." Lila stepped away, blinking hard. "I need to finish my homework." Celeste said nothing as Lila walked upstairs, but her silence felt heavier than words. That evening, Grayson returned with a bouquet of daffodils and a hopeful grin. "I heard you two had some time together," he said, placing the flowers in a vase. "How'd it go?" Celeste smiled. "We're getting there." Lila stayed quiet. Later in her room, she wrote again in the notebook Miss Harper had given her. Trust test. Entry 5. She lies like it's a second language. Even her truth sounds like it's wearing someone else's clothes. She closed the notebook, slid it under her pillow, and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a pause before something important breaks. Tuesday started like any other spring morning in Charleston. Crisp air, dew on the roses, and sunlight slipping between the white shutters of the Whitmore estate. But for Lila, something felt off before her feet even hit the floor. There was a stillness to the house, not the usual quiet that came with being alone, but a silence that listened back. She walked downstairs in her socks, the charm bracelet lightly tapping against her wrist. As she passed the parlor, she saw Celeste leaning over her father's desk, flipping through a file folder with gloved fingers. She didn't notice Lila. Not until the floorboard creaked. Celeste straightened, calm and composed. "Good morning," she said with that soft southern lilt. "I didn't expect to see you up so early." "I couldn't sleep." Celeste closed the folder slowly. "I was just looking for a recipe I tucked in here. Your father's filing system is ambitious." Lila nodded, her eyes on the folder still in Celeste's hand. It wasn't a cookbook. "Want some toast?" Celeste offered. "Or tea?" "I'm okay." Celeste walked to the kitchen, heels clicking with delicate precision. The moment she was gone, Lila stepped into the study. She knew she had maybe 30 seconds. She opened the folder. Not a recipe. Bank documents, insurance forms, an application marked with her father's name, and Celeste's signature beneath his. She snapped a photo with the tablet she'd stashed in her hoodie. Then she placed everything back exactly how it was. At school, Lila sat through math without hearing a word. Her thoughts looped like static. Names, signatures, timelines. She scribbled notes in the back of her planner under a heading she hadn't used before. Why is she in such a hurry? By the time she reached art class, she was wound so tight she could hardly hold her brush. Ms. Harper crouched beside her easel. "Storm in your brain today?" Lila nodded. "You want to talk it out?" Lila hesitated. "Can I ask you something weird?" Ms. Harper smiled. Those are my favorite kind. Is it normal for someone to sign papers for someone else without asking? Ms. Harper tilted her head. Depends on the papers. And the person. Like insurance stuff. The teacher's eyes narrowed slightly. Not without permission. And definitely not without their name being on it too. Why? Lila shrugged. Just wondering. Lila, Ms. Harper said softly. If something's going on, you can tell me. I'm okay, Lila lied. I'm just thinking about a story. Ms. Harper smiled, but her eyes stayed on Lila a second longer than usual. That afternoon, back at the estate, Lila found May waiting on the porch with 2 coffees and a pastry box. I figured it was time for a surprise visit, she said as Lila climbed the steps. Celeste around? She left for a facial. Said she needed to prepare for next week's engagement shoot. May raised a brow. Already? She said the magazine wanted it early. Of course they did. They sat on the swing. Lila pulled out the tablet, opened the photos she'd taken, and handed it to May. May scrolled slowly, her mouth tightening. This isn't normal, she said, and this signature isn't your dad's. Not even close. I thought so. May tapped the screen. Let me run this past someone I trust, quietly. Lila nodded, her face pale. Did she say anything to you? Hint at what she was doing. No. She said she was looking for a recipe. May snorted. A recipe in a folder full of banking paperwork? I know. May looked at her niece. This little girl carrying the weight of a secret no child should have to hold, and shook her head. You're doing everything right, Lila. Just keep paying attention, but don't push. Let her show her hand. She already did, Lila said. She just thinks no one's watching. May left just before dinner. That evening, Grayson returned from a charity dinner and brought home a paper gift bag from a local boutique. For you, he said, handing it to Celeste like a prize ribbon. She opened it with an exaggerated gasp. A cashmere wrap. You spoil me. Lila watched them from the stairs, unseen. I talked to Paul Kendrick today, Grayson added as he poured himself a glass of water. Said we should start looking at premarital contracts. Celeste's smile twitched. Already? He said it's standard, especially with Lila involved, just making sure everything's solid. There was a silence. Of course, Celeste said. Whatever makes everyone comfortable. But her voice had cooled. Later that night, as the house dimmed and footsteps faded, Lila pulled her charm bracelet from the music box again. She held it to the light, watching the tiny piano charm twirl on its loop. Then she noticed something odd. The charm's base had a small slit on the side. Not decorative, intentional. She turned it over. There was no inscription, no engraving, just a faint seam along the silver. Her heart stuttered. She walked to her closet, reached for her jewelry tools from craft class, and used a tiny prong to press into the seam. Click. The charm popped open. Inside, a barely visible microchip. She dropped it on her desk like it had burned her. Then, slowly, she leaned forward. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a gift. She didn't sleep that night. Not really. And when morning came, she didn't open her music box. She packed the charm into a small envelope, labeled it in pencil, proof, and tucked it in her backpack. Because now, it wasn't just about trust. It was about the truth. Rain kissed the windows of the art gallery in slow, steady rhythm as May stood behind the counter, her phone pressed to one ear, eyes fixed on the printout spread before her. The insurance forms Lila had photographed now sat in high resolution, every signature, every field, crisp and clear, A voice crackled through the phone, no doubt about it. That's a forged signature. Whoever filled this out tried to mimic Grayson's style, but didn't know his business pen has a broken loop on the W in Whitmore. May's fingers tightened around the phone. And this policy? Filed under an expedited clause. In the event of death, the payout bypasses probate, goes straight to the beneficiary, which is Celeste. Every penny. May let the silence stretch for a beat. Can you run a check on her real name? I'm already working on it. Thank you, Marcy. And be careful, she's good at hiding. She hung up and glanced at the clock, nearly 3:00. Lila would be out of school in 30 minutes. She folded the papers and slid them into a sealed envelope, tucking them into her bag just as the front bell jingled. Lila stepped inside, soaked to the knees, her raincoat clinging to her small frame. Her backpack sagged with weight that had nothing to do with books. May handed her a towel. I was just about to close up. Lila dropped onto the couch near the back window, unzipped her bag, and carefully pulled out the envelope labeled Proof. I found something, she whispered. May sat beside her. Lila opened the envelope and spilled the piano charm into her palm. It's a recorder, she said. Or a chip. Something weird. It was inside the bracelet. May blinked. You're sure? I opened it with my prong tool from art class. Did anyone see you? No, but I think it's been listening to me this whole time. May exhaled slowly, as if trying to hold back 100 emotions at once. This bracelet, she said. Did she ever ask you to wear it every day? Lila nodded. She said it was for milestones. That we'd build memories with it. May reached into her own bag and pulled out a plastic case. We're going to have someone take a look at this chip, quietly. Until then, I want you to wear the bracelet again. Don't act different. Don't say anything about what we just did. Lila looked up. You mean, pretend? May gave her a sad smile. I mean outsmart her. Back at the estate, the rain had softened to a mist. Celeste greeted them in the foyer with a silk robe and a chilled smile. There you are, she said to Lila. You missed tea. I made lemon scones. Sorry, Lila said, shrugging off her coat. I stayed late at school for a project. Celeste's eyes flicked to May. Did you now? May smiled thinly. She stopped by the gallery on her way home. We just finished a new exhibit. Celeste's gaze lingered, then softened. Well, I suppose even young ladies need creative outlets. Still, dinner is in 20 minutes. Let's all try to be on time. As she walked away, Lila whispered to May. She didn't believe you. May bent down slightly. She doesn't need to. Just let her keep thinking she's 2 steps ahead. Dinner was candlelit and quiet, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Grayson complimented Celeste's salmon, but Lila noticed how he didn't reach for her hand like he used to. Celeste smiled, but it didn't travel far. After dessert, Lila went upstairs and reopened her notebook. Trust test, entry 6. She watches me like a mirror, always waiting to see what I'll reflect back. She closed it just as Celeste appeared at her door, leaning gently on the frame. Can we talk? Lila hesitated. Okay. Celeste entered, sat on the edge of the bed, and reached out to touch the charm bracelet now back on Lila's wrist. You wore it today, she said softly. Lila nodded. I know things have felt strange between us. It's hard. Blending families. Trust takes time. Lila said nothing. Celeste reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny silver charm, this one shaped like a lighthouse. For guidance, she said, placing it in Lila's hand. You're the light in your father's life. I see that. Lila stared at it. Thanks. Celeste smiled. Sleep well, sweetheart. She left as quietly as she came. Lila stared at the lighthouse charm for a long time. Later that night, when the house had sunk into its soft, expensive silence, she tiptoed into the hall. The light beneath her father's door glowed faintly. She stepped closer. Inside, she could hear voices. So the policy was processed, but she insisted it be kept private, Grayson was saying. I didn't even see the final paperwork. She said it was a surprise, he added. Something about protecting me. Lila's stomach turned. Paul Kendrick's voice came next, low, cautious. Grayson, surprises don't usually come with payout clauses. There was a pause. Then Grayson's voice again, this time quieter, shaken. You think she's using me? I think we need to find out. Lila backed away, heart pounding. The truth was starting to catch up. And Celeste? She was still smiling in the dark. It was a Thursday afternoon when the real storm began. Not the kind that darkens skies or floods sidewalks. This one crept in on high heels, perfectly timed smiles, and carefully folded lies. But now, the mask had started to slip, and Lila knew it. After school, May picked her up again, the rain light and steady against the windshield. Lila clutched her backpack, the envelope still tucked safely inside, along with the new lighthouse charm. She hadn't told May about that one yet. It felt heavier than the bracelet itself. She gave me another charm, Lila said, staring out the window. A lighthouse? May didn't glance over. She's trying to steer you. She just doesn't realize you've already got a compass. They didn't drive to the gallery this time. They went downtown into the quieter part of Charleston, to a little tea shop with lace curtains and tiny mismatched plates. Inside, at a table tucked in the back, a woman sat waiting. Sharp eyes. No-nonsense expression. Hair pulled back in a tight twist. Marcy Flynn. She stood when she saw them. You must be Lila, she said, her voice warm but focused. I've heard a lot about you. Lila nodded, sliding into the seat beside May. Marcy opened a leather folio and laid out a series of documents. Copies, all crisp and dated. Celeste Carrington, she began. Isn't her first name? Or her second? She's gone by at least 5 in the last 8 years. Her legal name, as far as I could track, is Madeline Vaughn. May blinked. Vaughn. That sounds familiar. It should, Marcy said. She was married twice under that name, one annulled, one quietly settled. Each time, she disappeared with sizable assets. Not enough to cause legal firestorms, but enough to make people think twice about talking. Lila leaned in. So she's done this before. At least twice, Marcy said. Possibly more. She said the first picture in the frame was from a costume gala, Lila murmured. It wasn't, Marcy replied. That man was her first husband. I found the courthouse record. May looked at Lila. You were right to trust your gut. She wants everything Dad has, Lila said, voice low. She almost has it, Marcy said. The policy's active. And the engagement? That gives her social security, should anything happen. It also builds credibility if things go sideways. May tapped the table. We need to show Grayson everything. We do, Marcy agreed, but we do it carefully. If we confront her too early, she'll vanish. She's good at that. Lila opened her backpack and placed the charm on the table. She was using this to listen, I'm sure of it. Marcy pulled a small cloth pouch from her folio and slipped the charm inside. I'll have my tech team confirm, but I believe you. Lila's hands trembled slightly as she pulled them back into her lap. Back at the estate that evening, Grayson sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He didn't even notice Lila slip in until she was halfway to the couch. "Hey," he said, patting the cushion beside him. She sat down quietly. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded. Grayson sighed. "You ever want something to be true so badly, you start ignoring the signs that it's not?" Lila looked up at him. "Are you talking about her?" He nodded slowly. "Paul said some things today. And May. And now I'm starting to... I don't know." "You want her to be good," Lila whispered. "But she isn't." He looked at her. Really looked. "I think I needed to believe in something again. After your mom." Lila placed her hand on his. "I don't want you to be alone," she said. "I just don't want you to be fooled." Grayson swallowed hard. "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." They sat in silence, just the fire crackling softly. Later that night, Lila tiptoed to the window when she heard a car pull up the gravel path. A sleek black sedan idled near the side gate. Celeste stepped out, looking around cautiously before opening the passenger door. Dorian Ellis emerged. He handed her a small folder. They didn't hug. Didn't linger, but something passed between them. Familiarity, urgency. Then he drove off. Celeste watched the car disappear before walking inside. Lila backed into the shadows of the hallway just in time. She didn't sleep. Instead, she wrote in her notebook. Trust test, entry 7. She isn't working alone. She never was. The next morning, Grayson asked her to stay home from school. "Paul's coming by," he said. "I want you there." "You've earned that." Celeste didn't question it. She kissed him on the cheek, told him she had errands in town, and disappeared before 9 a.m. By 10 o'clock, Paul arrived. And by 10:30, so did Marcy. Grayson looked pale by the time they finished laying everything out. The insurance forms, the multiple identities, the prior marriages, and the chip in the charm. He stood by the window, gripping the sill like it was the only solid thing left in the room. "She told me she loved me," he said quietly. "She probably did," Marcy said gently. "In the only way she knows how. By wanting what you could give her." He turned to Lila. "I'm sorry." Lila walked over and wrapped her arms around his waist. "I'm just glad you're listening now." He held her tighter than he had in months. Then he looked at Marcy. "What do we do next?" Marcy's eyes sharpened. "We set the trap. And we let her walk right into it." The plan came together over quiet coffee, under whispers, and behind locked doors. Marcy spread the documents across the mahogany table in Grayson's study, her voice low but steady. Paul Kendrick leaned in, reading every word twice. May stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the driveway like it might whisper secrets. Lila sat beside her father, silent but present. Her fingers fiddled with the lighthouse charm now tucked into her pocket. It no longer felt like a gift, it felt like evidence. "She's expecting to finalize the wedding plans next week," Grayson said, still struggling to keep his tone level. "Engagement photos, deposit on the venue, guest list confirmations." "She's fast-tracking everything because she's running out of time," Marcy replied. "She knows the walls are closing in, even if she doesn't know from where." "So what's the play?" May asked. "We let her keep pushing forward," Marcy said. "We give her a sense of comfort. Then we pull the curtain back. But we need to catch her in a lie she can't explain, one that unravels her in real time." Grayson exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "And what if she bolts before we can?" "She won't," Marcy said, eyes sharp. "She's too close to the prize." Lila looked up. "What if I help?" Everyone turned to her. "She watches me," she continued. "She tests me, but I can test her back. Make her think I trust her. Ask questions. Get her talking. Grayson shook his head. I don't want you getting more involved. It's not safe. Lila held his gaze. I already am involved. Paul spoke next. She's brave, but she's right. The best way to catch someone who lies is to give them room to do it again. Later that afternoon, Lila found Celeste in the sunroom, flipping through a bridal magazine, pen in hand. Hey, Lila said softly. Celeste looked up, surprised. Hey, sweetheart. Lila walked in slowly, sitting on the edge of the velvet chaise. Can I ask you something? Celeste tilted her head, setting the pen down. Of course. Did you ever lose someone close to you? Like really close? Celeste blinked. The question caught her off guard. That's a big question. Lila shrugged. I think about my mom a lot lately. Celeste leaned forward, her voice low and smooth. I lost my aunt when I was 12. She raised me. It was sudden and messy. I didn't talk about it for a long time. Lila nodded. That's kind of how Dad was, after Mom. He didn't talk. Not really. Celeste reached for her hand. I'm glad we're talking now. Lila gave a small smile. Me too. Then she leaned in. Do you think Dad would ever do something that might hurt me on purpose? Celeste stiffened just slightly, just enough for Lila to catch. No, Celeste said, voice calm. Never. Your father loves you more than anything. Lila lowered her eyes. I heard him talking with Mr. Kendrick. Something about a policy. Celeste froze, just for half a second. Then she recovered. Oh, that's just standard legal stuff. Precautions. Your dad's trying to make sure you're protected. But it has your name on it, Lila said, barely above a whisper. Celeste smiled again. Because we're becoming a family. Lila studied her. Okay. She stood, brushing imaginary dust from her jeans. I'm going to practice piano. As she left the room, Celeste called out behind her. Thank you, Lila, for trusting me. Lila didn't answer. Upstairs, she opened her music box again and tucked the lighthouse charm inside, then closed the lid without winding it. That night, Grayson sat alone in his study, holding the charm in his hand. He turned it slowly, watching the light catch on its edges. She didn't flinch, he said when Marcy called. Not once. It was like she had her answers rehearsed. She does, Marcy said. That's how she's survived this long. But the cracks are there. Lila's opening them. The next day, Celeste invited a photographer to the estate for a test shoot in the garden. Grayson agreed, playing along. Lila watched as Celeste adjusted the placement of the bench, the lighting, the angle of her smile. She looked perfect, effortlessly composed. But to Lila, the image felt like a house of cards, one gust away from collapse. As the photographer packed up, Celeste walked over to Grayson. I was thinking we should finalize the honeymoon itinerary tonight. I found a villa in Santorini with a private pool, Grayson nodded. Sounds beautiful. I'll show you the link after dinner. Lila turned away, heart tightening. That night, while Celeste showered, Grayson quietly opened her jewelry drawer. Inside, tucked beneath a velvet pouch, was a second phone. He took a photo of the screen. Messages from Dorian. Stage 3 in motion. Don't delay. He's warming up. Grayson set the phone back exactly where he found it. Downstairs, May sat at the kitchen counter with Marcy. She's making her final move, May said. And now, Marcy replied, so do we. Lila stepped into the room, holding the small envelope that once held the piano charm. I want to be there when it happens, she said. I want to see it. Marcy looked at her. You sure? Lila nodded. I saw the lie. I want to see the truth. And in her eyes there was no fear. Only fire. Lila sat at the edge of her bed, the silver bracelet coiled in her palm like a question she already knew the answer to. Her heart beat louder than the old wall clock. Her music box sat open beside her, its ballerina frozen mid-spin. She hadn't wound it in days. Tonight was the night. Downstairs, May, Marcy, Paul, and Grayson moved like shadows, each one playing their part, each word measured, each glance quiet but charged. They were ready. The documents had been prepared. The tech was in place, and Lila had rehearsed her moment over and over in her head until it felt like muscle memory. Celeste had planned a dinner. Just family, she'd said. A thank you for the trust you've shown me. She wore a champagne-colored dress and diamonds that shimmered as if they already belonged to the estate. The dining room glowed in soft candlelight. Celeste poured wine for Grayson and sweet tea for Lila, her movements graceful, warm, too perfect. I just wanted to say how grateful I am, she said, raising her glass. For everything. For this chance to be part of something real. Grayson smiled faintly. It's been quite a journey. Lila watched her father closely. His expression was composed, but his eyes had turned calculating. She could see it now, how much he had changed in just a few days. He no longer looked like a man sleepwalking through charm. He looked like someone who'd finally woken up. I have something too, he said, placing his glass down. Celeste blinked. Oh? A surprise? Grayson nodded toward May, who disappeared briefly and returned carrying a small black box. For you, he said. Celeste smiled, slightly guarded, and opened it. Inside was a new charm for Lila's bracelet. A golden key. She looked from the charm to Grayson. For Lila, he said softly. Because she's unlocked a truth I was too blind to see. Silence. Lila reached out, took the charm, and clipped it next to the piano. Celeste's smile faltered. That's very symbolic. Paul cleared his throat gently. And speaking of symbols, there's something else we'd like to go over. Privately. Celeste's gaze shifted, just slightly. Now? Grayson nodded. Yes, now. They moved into the study, and Lila followed, small but steady. Paul laid out the printed emails, the insurance forms, and finally a still frame captured from Celeste's second phone, stage 3 in motion. I don't understand, Celeste said, voice light. This is completely out of context. Marcy stepped forward. We know about Madeline Vaughn. We know about the past aliases, the previous marriages. The accounts, the withdrawals, everything. Celeste's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. You didn't just want my heart, Grayson said quietly. You wanted my legacy. Celeste turned to Lila then, and something unspoken passed between them. One last attempt to hold on to the thread. I tried, she said. I really did. I didn't mean for it to start this way, but I cared. For both of you. Lila met her gaze. Then why did you lie every step of the way? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Celeste exhaled, as if deflating. So what now? That depends on you, Paul said. You can leave quietly tonight. Walk away. No headlines, no police, no lawsuits. Or we go the other route, and you answer for all of it. Celeste straightened. You have no proof of intent. Marcy held up the piano charm. We have enough. The room held its breath. Celeste looked at Grayson. So, that's it? That's it, he said. I won't let my daughter live under a roof built on lies. Her eyes flicked toward the window, the candlelight playing across her cheekbones. For the first time, her poise cracked. Not dramatically, but enough for everyone to see that the game was over. "I'll pack a bag," she said. Marcy nodded. "We'll wait outside." Celeste walked out slowly, heels clicking softly across the floor like the end of a song. Lila turned to her father, her eyes wet but not broken. "You believed me," she whispered. "I should have believed you sooner." They stood in the quiet that followed. Later that night, Lila returned to her room and placed the golden key inside her music box, right next to the ballerina. She didn't wind it. Not yet. She just sat with it open, the silence now a kind of peace. Outside, the sky was clear. No thunder, no rain, just the hush of a house no longer pretending. By Saturday morning, the Whitmore estate felt eerily quiet, as if the walls themselves were catching their breath. Celeste was gone. No farewell, no final performance. Just her clothes missing from the walk-in closet, and a note on embossed paper left on the vanity table. "I hope one day you'll understand. I never wanted to hurt anyone." The handwriting was elegant, controlled, just like her. Lila read it twice, then handed it to May without a word. May crumpled it slowly and tossed it into the kitchen bin. "She didn't write that for you," May said. "She wrote that for herself." Grayson stood at the edge of the living room, his jaw tense, fingers wrapped around a mug he hadn't sipped from in 20 minutes. "She took the phone," he said quietly, "and the earrings I gave her. She took whatever she could without setting off alarms," Paul added, "but she didn't take what matters." Lila sat at the window, watching the wind move through the willow tree out front. "She'll just do it again, somewhere else." "Maybe," Marcy said from the hallway, "but now she'll be watched." "I filed the report this morning, quietly. She won't move freely again." Grayson turned to his daughter. "I never wanted you in the middle of this." "But I was," Lila said, eyes still on the tree. "And if I hadn't been, we wouldn't have stopped her." He crossed the room, kneeling beside her. "I should have seen it," he whispered. "All the signs. I was too busy trying to rewrite the past. I didn't see what was right in front of me." Lila looked at him, her voice soft. "I just wanted you to be okay." "I am now," he said. "Because of you." That night the estate was still, but it no longer felt heavy. The spaces where Celeste had left her mark, the curated entryway table, the bridal planner on the kitchen counter, the makeup tray by the bathroom mirror, had been cleared. Grayson stood alone in the garden, hands in his pockets, the late spring breeze tugging gently at his shirt. Lila stepped out barefoot, her sketchbook tucked under one arm. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Too quiet." He looked up at the sky. "Funny, I used to crave the quiet. Now I'm not sure what to do with it." Lila sat beside him on the stone bench. "I think we should keep it, but add music back in." Grayson turned to her. "Music? I want to play again. The piano." He smiled slowly. "Your mom would have loved that." Lila opened her sketchbook and showed him what she'd drawn. A lighthouse. Not perfect, but strong. Balanced. Anchored. "For guidance," she said. He put his arm around her shoulders and kissed the top of her head. "I think we both needed one of those." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A courier delivered a manila envelope addressed to Grayson Whitmore, stamped from Atlanta. Inside was a stack of printed emails, several credit card statements, and a short, handwritten note. "For the next time she tries." Just in case. No signature. Marcy confirmed the handwriting matched a woman named Camille Ellis, Dorian's sister, the quiet one from the dinner party, apparently not as quiet as she'd seemed. "She gave us everything," Marcy said over the phone. She was probably in over her head. And when it turned, she jumped ship. Grayson exhaled. "What do we do with it?" "Keep it, in case she ever circles back." Lila stared at the envelope on the counter. She always said she was helping kids. "Maybe we could actually do that." Grayson tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "She lied about being a consultant. But what if we built something real? A foundation. For kids who feel like they can't speak up, or don't know how." Grayson smiled, slow and proud. "I think that's a beautiful idea." He paused. "What would we call it?" Lila glanced at the charm bracelet still looped around her wrist. The piano, the lighthouse, the key. Then she looked up. "Safe note," she said, "because sometimes one small sound can change everything." By afternoon, they'd cleared the music room. The old family piano sat beneath the window again, polished and waiting. Grayson found one of his late wife's old recordings, her favorite Chopin nocturne, and played it softly from the house speakers, while Lila placed a new drawing beside the keys. Her mother, herself, and a third figure just beginning to fade from the frame. She wound the music box for the first time in weeks. The melody creaked to life, slightly warped, but still beautiful. Still hers. As the notes filled the room, Lila whispered under her breath, not to anyone in particular, "We're okay now." And for the first time in a long time, it felt true. The wind shifted that night. Lila felt it before the breeze even touched the curtains in her room. Something electric, something unfinished. She sat up in bed, hugging her knees to her chest. The moonlight fell across the carpet in quiet, pale stripes. The kind of light that didn't comfort. It revealed. Downstairs, the house slept. But not all of it. At 2:14 a.m., the gate sensor pinged. Marcy had set up a quiet alert, just in case. When it chimed softly on her phone from the guest room where she stayed when things felt unsettled, she was already slipping on her shoes. She didn't call for Grayson yet. She didn't need to. Because by the time she got to the foyer, the front door was open. May stood on the porch, robe pulled tight. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She's back." In the distance, headlights vanished behind the trees, and the estate's gravel driveway settled again. Lila stood silently at the top of the staircase, half shadow, listening. "What does she want now?" Grayson asked, now joining them, eyes still fogged with sleep, but heart wide awake. Marcy's expression sharpened. She forgot something, or she thinks she did. "Do we tell Lila?" he asked. But before anyone could answer, Lila spoke from the stairs. "You don't have to." They all turned. She descended slowly, her bare feet quiet on the wood. "I knew she'd come back." She never said goodbye. In the morning, the full light of day revealed what the dark had hidden. The garden gate was unlatched. 2 muddy footprints pressed into the path just outside the solarium. And on the piano, someone had left a single pink rose. No note. No explanation, just the flower. The same type Celeste once insisted on using for the wedding centerpieces. Grayson stared at it for a long moment. "She's not gone," he said finally. "Not really." Marcy nodded. "People like her don't vanish. They linger, just out of reach." Testing the edges, May walked into the room, holding a small, half-folded envelope. This was tucked in the guesthouse door. Inside, just 2 lines, in the same precise script. "Lila was right. You'll never really know what was real." Paul arrived within the hour, reading the note twice before sighing heavily. "She's playing her final hand, trying to twist the knife." She already lost, May said. But that doesn't mean she won't still try to stain something on her way out, Paul replied. Grayson ran a hand through his hair. What do we do now? We stay steady, Marcy said. We don't react. And we protect the one thing she tried to fracture. Her eyes moved to Lila, who sat silently at the dining table, sketchbook open but untouched. That night, as Grayson tucked her in, Lila asked a question she hadn't dared until now. Did you ever love her? He hesitated. Then sat beside her on the edge of the bed. I think I loved the idea of her, the idea that maybe I wasn't broken, that there could still be something waiting for me beyond the hurt. He looked at her then, voice softer. But it wasn't love. Not really. Because love doesn't make you feel smaller, or suspicious, or alone. Lila nodded slowly, fingers curling around the edge of her blanket. She fooled you. She fooled a lot of people, he said, but she didn't fool you. She leaned against his side, her voice barely a whisper. I kept thinking, what if no one believed me? What if it all happened anyway? But they did, he said, and even if they hadn't, what you did was still brave. The room was quiet again. Grayson stood, kissing her forehead. We're okay now. But as he left and closed the door, Lila opened her sketchbook and turned to a fresh page. She drew the rose first, then the charm bracelet. Then, at the bottom, the music box, and beside it, 3 tiny figures. A girl, a woman with curls and a shadow walking away. She titled the page, What I Know Is True, and left it open on the desk, just in case the wind shifted again. The weekend passed like fog, thin, quiet, full of things not said out loud. Grayson worked long hours in the study, barely touching his coffee. May hovered in and out of the house, making calls from the porch. Paul continued gathering anything that could legally protect what remained. Marcy came by twice, each time with a new detail, a new file, a new piece of the puzzle that was Celeste, Madeline Vaughn, whatever name she'd decide to wear next. But Lila watched. She watched how her father folded his newspaper slower now, as if reading between the lines. She watched how the doors that used to swing freely were locked, how their shadows felt a little longer. Still, the air didn't feel dangerous. It felt unfinished. Tuesday morning arrived with a stillness that pressed against the windows. No wind, no birdsong, just the hush of something on its way. At breakfast, Lila pushed her spoon through a bowl of oatmeal without tasting it. You okay? Grayson asked gently. I will be. He didn't ask her to explain. Not anymore. Later that day, as Lila walked home from school, a car was parked down the street from the estate. Not directly in front, not close enough to be obvious. But there. A matte black sedan, not luxury, not flashy. Just watching. She kept walking, pretending not to notice. But her spine lit up like a warning bell. Inside the house, May was already there, flipping through a folder with Marcy at the kitchen counter. Lila dropped her bag and spoke before anyone could greet her. She's back. Marcy straightened. Where? Down the road. Black car, parked behind the hedges. May was already grabbing her keys. I'll go get a plate. Don't, Marcy said, stopping her with a glance. Let her think she's invisible. It's what she does best. Grayson stepped in from the hallway. What do we do? We prepare, Marcy replied. If she's circling back, she's not done. And if she's not done, she's desperate. That night, Lila placed the lighthouse charm back onto the bracelet and stared at herself in the mirror. Her face was changing. She could see it, a little older. A little less afraid. There was a steadiness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She walked into the piano room and sat down. The keys were cold under her fingers, but they welcomed her. She began to play, soft, uncertain, a lullaby her mother used to hum when storms rolled in. Grayson stood in the doorway, silent. "I want her to know she didn't win," Lila said without turning around. "I want her to hear something she can't touch." He crossed the room, sat beside her on the bench. His hands hovered above the keys, then settled next to hers. Together, they played, uneven, off-tempo, but real. The next morning, Lila opened the front door and found an envelope on the welcome mat. No stamp, no address. Just her name, Lila Whitmore, in that same delicate, deceitful handwriting. She picked it up slowly, carefully, and brought it to the dining table. May and Marcy were already there, as if they knew. Inside the envelope was a single photo. Celeste, standing near the garden gate. From years ago, maybe. Wearing the same smile, but younger. In the background, her mother, Claire Whitmore, talking to someone out of frame. "What is this?" Grayson asked, lifting the photo. Marcy narrowed her eyes. "She's rewriting her connection, making it seem like she's always been part of your story." May snorted. "She's delusional." "No," Lila whispered. "She's playing long game." They stared at the photo, silent. "She wants me to doubt," Lila added. "Wants us all to wonder just enough. A whisper of truth makes the lie harder to cut through." Grayson reached across the table and took Lila's hand. "We don't wonder." Not anymore. That evening, Lila walked the garden path alone. The air smelled like jasmine, and the sun bled slowly toward the marsh. She stopped at the same bench where Celeste had once posed for photos, the same one where Dorian had passed her that folder. From her pocket, Lila pulled out her music box key, the one her mother had given her. She twisted it once. Then again, a gentle melody rose. She placed it on the bench and walked away. Let her hear it. Let her remember what she lost, what she never truly had. Let her feel, for just a moment, what truth sounds like. The music box was still playing when May found it. She had wandered into the garden after her morning coffee, instinct pulling her down the brick path toward the bench near the hedge. The melody drifted through the mist, like something lost and trying to find its way home. She stopped, bent slightly, and stared. It was Lila's, no doubt, and someone had rewound it. May picked it up gently, her thumb brushing the delicate engraving at the bottom. For moments that matter. Claire's handwriting. She turned and walked back inside. Grayson was in the living room, flipping through the mail, when he looked up and saw the box. "She left it in the garden," May said. "Open." "Still playing." His mouth tightened. "She's watching again." She never stopped. He reached for the box and closed the lid slowly. The melody choked into silence. Upstairs, Lila stared at her sketchbook. She hadn't drawn since the photo arrived. Something about it. It didn't scare her. It unsettled her in a deeper way, like a lie pretending to wear her family's skin. The photo was in her drawer now, beneath her socks. She didn't want to look at it again, but she couldn't bring herself to throw it away either. She closed the book and stood. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. May beat Grayson to it. A package sat on the porch. No markings, no courier, just a plain white box with one word scrawled in script across the top. Final. May's fingers hovered above it. "Do we open it?" Grayson asked, stepping beside her. "She wants us to." "That's the trap." Lila appeared behind them, her voice quiet. "Then let's see what she thinks is the end." May opened the box slowly. Inside, a leather-bound notebook, pages thick with notes, sketches, taped clippings, each one more intimate than the last. Photos of Grayson at events, business receipts, menus from the Harbor Club. A strand of blonde hair taped to a page, a copy of Claire's obituary. "This isn't just obsession," Marcy said when she arrived. "It's staging. She's documenting her own version of your story. Like she belongs in it," May added. Grayson rubbed his jaw. "She's not writing a memoir. She's leaving a warning." Lila flipped to the back page. One sentence, center-aligned. "I was almost one of you." That night none of them slept much. Even Marcy stayed over. The house was locked. Cameras checked. Every curtain drawn. But the air didn't care about locks. It moved slow and thick through the halls, like it carried memory instead of dust. At 3:12 a.m., the sensor went off again. The gate. Marcy sat up instantly, checked her monitor. Black sedan. Same model, same angle. But this time, the driver stepped out and walked toward the front of the house. "Call Paul," she said to Grayson as she grabbed her coat. "Keep Lila upstairs." Grayson nodded, already dialing. May stood by the stairs, blocking the hallway like a sentry. In the driveway, the figure stopped at the edge of the light. Celeste, hair down, coat buttoned to her neck. One hand clutching something, another envelope. Marcy stepped out onto the porch, calm. "You're trespassing." "I'm not staying," Celeste said. "I just need to say something. To Lila." "No. I'm not here to hurt anyone," she added. "That was never the plan. Plans change." Celeste stepped forward one more pace. Her voice lowered. Tell her I believed she loved him. That's why it hurt when she saw through me. You brought this on yourself." Celeste placed the envelope on the step. "I know." And then she turned. She didn't run. She just walked back to the car and drove off without looking back. Marcy waited until the tail lights vanished before retrieving the envelope. Inside was a photo. A real one. Claire and Grayson, arms around each other, smiling in a candid moment. Lila in the middle, holding a seashell, laughing. Behind them, blurred in the distance, Celeste. Younger, alone, near the edge of the beach. She had been there, on the fringe, not part of it. Just watching. Marcy set the envelope on the table as dawn began to crack through the clouds. She wanted to be remembered, she said softly. Even if it meant being the ghost in the photo. Later that morning, Lila walked into the room, glanced at the picture and said nothing. She picked up the envelope, opened it, and stared at the image for a long time. "I don't hate her," she said quietly. "But I don't believe her either." Grayson stood behind her. "You don't have to. I just want to stop looking over my shoulder." "You will," he said. "Soon." Lila touched the photo, then slid it back into the envelope. "I'll decide when the story ends." And she meant it. The envelope sat untouched on the mantel for 3 days. Grayson didn't move it. May wouldn't touch it. Lila passed it each morning and night without looking inside again. Not because she was afraid of what it contained, but because she already understood what it meant. Celeste wasn't coming back. Not in the way she had before. Not with the smile and the story and the plan tucked behind her spine. She had stepped out of their lives not as a villain fleeing the scene, but as a shadow quietly receding into its rightful corner. What remained was something stranger than hatred, remnants of what could have been, and the ache of almost. Marcy called that Thursday morning. Her voice was low, clipped. "She's left the state." Grayson leaned against the kitchen counter, mug in hand. "For good?" She drained the last of her offshore account, bought a one-way ticket to Portugal. No return. She's not hiding, just removing herself. Will the authorities follow? Probably not. There's no appetite for a chase with no concrete loss. She took time, not money. Grayson's jaw tightened. That was never hers to take. Marcy was silent a moment. It's over, Grayson. Let her be a ghost. She's good at that. That afternoon, Lila stood in the music room, running her fingers across the ivory keys, not pressing them, just tracing the memory of music. The light filtered in through the tall windows, casting long golden beams that reminded her of her mother's studio, always warm, always filled with quiet work. She sat down and played 2 notes, then 3. A familiar pattern. The tune from the music box. May appeared in the doorway, arms folded but eyes soft. You remember that from when you were little? Lila nodded. It's still there, even after everything else changed. May walked over and sat beside her on the bench. You thinking about her? I'm thinking about how she almost changed everything. And how close she got. She didn't win. She left a scar. May sighed, brushing a lock of hair from Lila's face. Some stories don't disappear. They just stop asking to be told. They sat together, the unfinished song hanging between them. Later that evening, Grayson pulled a box from the attic. Dusty, unlabeled. He placed it on the living room floor and called Lila over. I haven't opened this since your mom passed. Inside were photos, journals, letters, even a videotape marked Claire's 40th piano recording. Lila reached for the cassette with trembling hands. Do we still have something that plays this? She asked. I think there's an old player in the den closet. Minutes later, the screen flickered to life. A younger Claire sat at the grand piano, hair falling over her shoulders, laughing as she adjusted the bench. Then she played. It wasn't perfect. A few missed notes. A pause where she forgot the bridge. But it was her. Alive. Lila leaned forward, knees tucked under her chin, watching her mother's fingers move with such tenderness it almost hurt. Grayson sat beside her, eyes glistening. I forgot how much she used to hum while she played. I remember, Lila whispered. She'd hum even when she didn't know she was doing it. When the tape ended, the room stayed still. Grayson placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. We can't rewrite what happened, but we can start telling a better story from here. That night, Lila opened her notebook again, the one Mizin Harper had given her at the very beginning. She hadn't written in it since the garden photo arrived. Now, she flipped to a new page. Trust test. Final entry. She came in with a story she thought she could control. But what she didn't know was that ours had already been written. And real stories, the ones worth keeping, don't shatter under pressure. They grow, they adapt, and they survive. She closed the notebook and placed it on her nightstand. Before turning off the light, she walked to the window. The garden looked soft in the moonlight. The bench was empty. The gate was shut. The willow trees swayed with the breeze but said nothing. And in that silence, there was peace, not perfect peace, but enough. The morning of the dedication ceremony dawned with soft skies and a breeze that carried the scent of gardenias through the open windows of the Whitmore estate. Lila stood in front of the mirror, carefully clipping her charm bracelet around her wrist. The piano. The lighthouse. The key. Each charm caught the light differently, like pages of a story she now carried with quiet pride. Today she would add one more. Downstairs, Grayson waited with a small velvet box in his hand. His suit jacket hung over the chair. He looked up as she stepped into the room, his smile gentle and a little in awe. "You look just like your mother," he said, voice thick with meaning. Lila blinked once, then smiled back. "Thanks, Dad." He held out the box. "I had something made for you, to mark today." Inside, nestled in satin, was a charm shaped like an open book. On one side, the initials SWF, Safe with Family. Lila traced the tiny lettering with her finger. "You remembered. You taught me," he said softly. "You taught all of us." They drove together through Charleston's cobblestone streets, past iron gates and flowering dogwoods, until they reached the new building. It wasn't large, not flashy, but it was beautiful. Brick and glass, clean lines, a porch that wrapped around like an invitation. And above the doorway, carved in gentle script, the Safe Note Foundation, a place where young voices are never too small to matter. May stood by the entrance, holding a bouquet of white lilies and wearing a dress with bold blue flowers that refused to blend in. Marcy waited near the stage, scanning the crowd with practiced ease, her subtle nod to Lila a quiet sign that all was well. Ms. Harper arrived just as the ceremony began. She carried a worn notebook tucked under her arm, and a smile meant only for Lila. "Still writing?" she asked, squeezing her hand. "Every day," Lila replied. The mayor spoke first, then Paul Kendrick. Grayson followed, steady and composed, his voice stronger now, clearer. He spoke of community, of trust, of second chances, and the courage to start over. And then it was Lila's turn. She stepped onto the stage, the wind catching the hem of her dress, the sun pressing gently against her back. "I used to think being small meant being silent," she began. "That if your voice wasn't loud, it didn't count. That adults always knew more, or that they were too busy to listen." A pause. "But I was wrong." She looked out across the faces, familiar ones, curious ones, supportive ones. Sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that know the truth first. Not because we're trying to be right, but because we're the ones still paying attention. A breeze stirred, lifting the edge of her hair. She smiled. "This place isn't just for kids who need help. It's for kids who already know what's wrong, and just need someone who will believe them. Someone who'll stand beside them and say, 'I hear you.'" She held up her bracelet, letting the charms clink gently in the microphone. "These are the pieces of what we survived, and what we're still becoming." The audience clapped. Not politely, not for show, but with warmth, like they'd seen something honest, something fragile and real, and felt lucky to be part of it. Afterward, under a cluster of magnolia trees, Lila sat on the edge of a low garden wall, pulling petals apart from a fallen bloom. Grayson joined her, offering a bottled lemonade and a soft laugh. "You stole the show," she shrugged. "Maybe the story wanted to be told." He looked at her a long moment. "I hope I never forget what you taught me, Lila." "What's that?" He paused. "That love doesn't mean looking away when things get hard. It means standing still, seeing clearly, and holding your ground." She nodded. "That's what Mom did." He placed an arm around her shoulder. "And what you did too." As the sun dipped low and the guests slowly trickled away, Lila wandered back inside the foundation building. It was quiet now, the air still carrying that new wall scent. Paint, wood, possibility. She found the small library room just off the main hallway, shelves half filled. A circle of beanbags, a corkboard waiting for the first flyer, and on the desk, a journal with the foundation's name embossed in silver. She opened it to the first page and wrote, "If you're reading this, you matter. If no one believed you, I do. If it hurts, that means it's real." And if it's real, it can change. Start here. Write what you know. Then keep going. Love, L.W. She closed the journal gently. Outside, her father called her name. The music box melody played faintly from her bracelet's hidden speaker, a new feature May had suggested for comfort. It wasn't haunting now. It was soft, familiar. She walked toward the door, then turned one last time, just to look. The lights were dimmed, the air still, but it didn't feel empty. It felt ready. And as she stepped back into the light, the past finally let go. What remained was everything worth keeping. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matter to me either way.